There are certain kinds of people society chooses not to see. They move silently in the background, sweeping up discarded cups, wiping down forgotten counters, scrubbing away the dirt left behind by those who believe themselves too important to acknowledge such labor. These people are invisible, though they are the ones who keep the world upright. Naomi Williams knew all about invisibility. She had been living in it for years. She was 45 years old, her back bent from years of mopping floors, her hands rough and calloused from bleach and cheap gloves. She worked nights at a glistening skyscraper downtown, one of those glass towers that shone like a crown above the city, and mornings at a community center where she cleaned bathrooms no one else wanted to touch. She never complained, not to her coworkers, not to her supervisor, not even to her son, Jordan, who was now in college and believed his mother's quiet strength was indestructible. But strength comes at a price. Naomi was tired. Her body ached constantly, though she never admitted it. Rent was always late, though she smiled at her landlord as if everything was fine. Groceries were bought carefully, one bag at a time, stretching every penny into meals that filled Jordan's stomach. Even when she herself skipped dinner, what kept her moving wasn't money, because there was never enough of it. It was pride. Pride that she had raised her boy alone. Pride that she had never let the world break her. Pride that even in a city where black women like her were overlooked and underestimated, she had never bowed her head. And yet, for all her resilience, there were nights when loneliness clawed at her. Nights when the city lights felt like mocking eyes staring down at her struggles. Nights when she wondered if anyone would ever see her, truly see her, for the woman she was. It was on one of those nights, when the streets were slick with rain and her shoes were soaked through, that Naomi first saw the woman. She was crouched outside the back entrance of the skyscraper Naomi cleaned, a small figure wrapped in a gray shawl, her face hidden beneath the hood. At first, Naomi thought she was another of the city's forgotten souls, one of the homeless who drifted between shadows. That alone was not unusual. Naomi had seen countless men and women huddled near vents, trying to catch warmth from the building's exhaust. But there was something about this woman, something different. Her clothes, though worn, were not the tattered rags Naomi usually saw. The shawl was clean, its stitching intact. Her shoes, though scuffed, were once expensive, and her posture, that was what caught Naomi most of all. The woman's back was straight, her head lifted slightly, as though she were not begging for scraps but waiting, observing, calculating. Naomi stopped in her tracks, clutching her janitor's keys in one hand. For a moment, the two women simply stared at each other, the hum of the city buzzing around them. Then the woman spoke, her voice soft, cultured, but frayed with exhaustion. "Please, do you have any water?" Naomi hesitated. She was used to requests, spare change, cigarettes, food, but this woman didn't ask for money, just water. Something so basic, so human. Without thinking, Naomi reached into her bag and pulled out the bottle she always carried. She handed it over. The woman accepted it with trembling hands, sipping slowly, as though savoring each drop. When she finished, she looked up, and for the briefest instant Naomi saw her face. It was older, lined with years, but elegant, her cheekbones sharp, her eyes deep-set and piercing. Even beneath the weariness, there was a dignity about her, the kind that didn't fade with poverty. "Thank you," the woman whispered, and then, just as quickly, she turned away, pulling her hood lower as if ashamed. Naomi stood there, unsettled. Something about the woman clung to her, even as she went inside to start her shift. Over the next week, Naomi noticed her again, always near the same spot, always quiet, watching. Some nights she was there, other nights she wasn't. But when she was, she never begged from passersby. She only sat, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze lost somewhere in the distance. Naomi began to leave small things for her. Half a sandwich, a pair of clean socks, an extra scarf she no longer wore. Each time the woman accepted with a nod of gratitude but never asked for more. One night, Naomi offered to buy her coffee. The woman's lips curved in the faintest of smiles, as if amused by the offer. "Coffee would be lovely," she said. They sat on the curb together, paper cups warming their hands as the city roared around them. Naomi found herself speaking more than she intended, about her long shifts, about her son studying economics at college, about the loneliness of her days. The woman listened quietly, her eyes sharp and unblinking. When Naomi apologized for rambling, the woman shook her head. "Don't apologize. It's rare to hear truth spoken so freely." Naomi smiled awkwardly, not knowing what to say. There was something about this woman that drew her in, though she couldn't explain why. that it was after that night that things began to change. The woman appeared more frequently, sometimes waiting for Naomi when her shift ended. She never revealed much about herself, only that she had once traveled in circles most people never see, and that now she had chosen to live differently. Naomi found herself curious. Who was she, really? What had happened to bring her here, sitting outside a skyscraper in the rain? But whenever Naomi asked, the woman would deflect with a gentle laugh. One day, perhaps. For now, let me enjoy your company without the weight of my past. And so Naomi let it be. After all, wasn't it enough to simply be kind? Or so she thought. Then came the night of the confrontation. Naomi had just finished her shift, her uniform damp with sweat, when she stepped outside and saw a group of young men circling the woman. Their voices were mocking, cruel, their laughter sharp. "Hey grandma, what's a queen like you doing out here?" one sneered, yanking at her shawl. Naomi's blood boiled. Before she could think, she rushed forward, planting herself between the woman and the men. "Leave her alone," she snapped. The men laughed at her, jeering at the janitor with the mop still strapped to her cart. "What's this? Her bodyguard?" Naomi's fists clenched, but she stood her ground. Her voice shook, but her eyes didn't. "I said, leave her alone." Something in her defiance must have startled them, because after a moment of ridicule, they spat curses and drifted away. Naomi turned to the woman, who was still clutching her shawl, her face pale. "Are you all right?" The woman's gaze softened, and for the first time her hand touched Naomi's. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did," Naomi said firmly. "Nobody deserves to be treated that way." The woman studied her, her expression unreadable, as though she was seeing Naomi not just as a janitor, not just as a tired mother, but as something more. And in that moment, Naomi felt seen, truly seen. What Naomi didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly guessed, was that the woman she had just defended, the woman in the shawl, the one who drank water from her bottle and laughed at her stories over coffee, was no ordinary stranger. She was the mother of one of the wealthiest men in the city, a billionaire whose name appeared on buildings, foundations, and glossy magazine covers, and she was living in disguise, testing the world her son had built, searching for someone real in a city that bowed only to money. Naomi had no idea. All she knew was that she had found a friend in the shadows, but the shadows were about to turn against her. For on the very next night, Naomi returned to find the woman gone, not just absent, but vanished as though she had never been there at all. The only thing left was the gray shawl, folded neatly on the steps. Naomi picked it up, her heart pounding. Somehow, she knew this was only the beginning. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. The shawl lay in Naomi's hands like a riddle she couldn't solve. It was heavier than it looked, woven from soft wool that seemed too fine to belong to someone living on the streets. Her thumb brushed along its edge, where a small embroidered crest was stitched into the fabric. She hadn't noticed it before, an intricate design, subtle but unmistakably expensive. Naomi frowned. She didn't know much about fashion, but she knew the difference between what she bought at thrift stores and something that belonged in glossy catalogs. This shawl wasn't the garment of a woman forgotten by the world, so why had the woman been sitting out there in the cold? Night after night, Naomi carried the shawl home, folding it neatly on her kitchen table. All night it seemed to stare at her, silently demanding answers. She barely slept, tossing and turning as questions gnawed at her mind. Who was she? Why had she vanished so suddenly? And why did Naomi feel, deep in her bones, that their encounter had been no accident? The next night, Naomi returned to the skyscraper, half expecting the woman to be waiting, her mysterious eyes shining beneath her hood, but the steps were empty. The shadows that once held a companion now offered only silence. Night after night passed, and still the woman did not return. Naomi told herself it wasn't her concern. People came and went in the city all the time. Maybe the woman had found shelter somewhere else. Maybe she had decided to move on. But the truth was harder to swallow. Naomi missed her. She missed the late-night conversations, the quiet comfort of being seen, the strange bond that had grown between them in such a short time. It was strange to miss someone whose name you didn't even know, but Naomi did. A week later, the first clue arrived. Naomi was scrubbing the marble floors of the skyscraper's lobby when she overheard two security guards talking. They were leaning against the desk, their voices low but not low enough to escape her ears. "You hear about the old lady causing a scene last week?" one said. "Which one?" "The one who kept trying to get upstairs, claiming she had a right to see Mr. Whitmore." "Crazy, right? Said she was his mother or something." Naomi froze, her mop clattering softly against the bucket. Mr. Whitmore. The name was everywhere in the city, plastered on hospitals, theaters, scholarships. Daniel Whitmore, billionaire tycoon, owner of the very building she cleaned. He was one of those men whose photo appeared in magazines, smiling in tuxedos, shaking hands with politicians. The guard laughed. Security had to escort her out twice. Rich guy's mother, more like another nutcase trying to scam her way inside. The other snorted. Yeah, if she were really his mother, what would she be doing begging on the streets? Their laughter echoed against the marble walls, and Naomi's heart thudded in her chest. His mother, the woman, could it be? The elegant cheekbones, the sharp eyes, the shawl that spoke of hidden wealth. Suddenly it all made sense. But why? Why would a billionaire's mother be living in disguise, sitting in the rain outside her son's empire? Naomi's stomach twisted. She had stumbled into something far bigger than she understood. She told herself to forget it. This wasn't her business. She was just a janitor, scrubbing floors. No one noticed. Whatever the Whitmores did with their wealth and secrets had nothing to do with her. And yet, the thought wouldn't leave her alone. That night, as she folded Jordan's laundry and listened to him chatter about his classes, she caught herself staring at the shawl on the table. She imagined the woman's face, her voice whispering, one day, perhaps. One day had come sooner than Naomi expected. The very next evening, as Naomi was leaving work, she saw her again. The woman stood across the street, this time not on the steps but in the shadows, watching the building. When Naomi spotted her, she didn't flee. Instead, she nodded once, almost like a signal, before disappearing down the alley. Naomi's breath caught. Without thinking, she followed. The alley smelled of rain and old garbage, its bricks slick with moisture. At the far end, the woman waited, her shawl gone, her face bare beneath the dim streetlight. Up close, she looked older than Naomi remembered, tired, worn, but her eyes were still sharp, still commanding. I thought you'd left, Naomi said, her voice trembling slightly. Had to, the woman replied softly. There were complications. Naomi clutched the shawl she had brought in her bag. Is this yours? The woman's eyes flickered to it, then back to Naomi. Yes, thank you for keeping it safe. Naomi hesitated. The questions burned in her throat, but she forced them out. Those guards, they said, you're Mr. Whitmore's mother. Is it true? The silence stretched long enough that Naomi thought she wouldn't answer, but, finally, the woman exhaled, her voice almost a whisper. Yes, Daniel Whitmore is my son. Naomi's chest tightened. It was true. She hadn't imagined it. The woman she had defended, shared coffee with, offered sandwiches to. She was the mother of one of the wealthiest men alive. But why was she here? Why? Naomi began. But the woman raised a hand. Not now. Not here. She glanced nervously at the street, as though eyes were watching. It's dangerous to speak openly, but soon, you'll understand. Naomi frowned. Dangerous? Why? He's your son. Why won't he see you? The woman's lips pressed into a thin line, her gaze hardened. Because the truth, Naomi, is never as clean as it looks from the outside. Naomi blinked. You know my name. The faintest smile tugged at the woman's mouth. Of course I do. Do you think I'd spend so much time with someone without knowing who she was? Naomi shivered. Something about the way she said it, calm, knowing, made it clear that this woman was no ordinary mother, and her story was no simple tragedy. Before Naomi could speak again, footsteps echoed from the mouth of the alley. The woman stiffened. They've found me, she hissed. Naomi's blood went cold. Who? Stay away, Naomi, for your sake. You've already done more for me than you realize. And before Naomi could stop her, the woman slipped into the darkness, vanishing between buildings like smoke. Naomi stood frozen, the shawl heavy in her arms, her heart pounding with questions she couldn't answer. Who had found her? Why was she hiding, and what danger had Naomi just stumbled into by caring for her? That night, Naomi sat awake in her kitchen, staring at the city lights outside her window. She thought about the woman's words, about the sharpness in her eyes, about the way she seemed to know more than she revealed. Naomi had wanted to believe she was simply helping someone less fortunate, a soul lost in the city's cruelty. Now she realized she was standing at the edge of something far more dangerous, and as much as she told herself to walk away, she knew she wouldn't, because for the first time in years, Naomi felt like her life was entangled in something greater than mops and buckets, rent notices and long hours. She had become part of a secret, one that powerful men would never want exposed, and if she wasn't careful, it might destroy her. The next morning, as she left for her shift, Naomi found an envelope slipped beneath her door. Her name was written. Across the front in neat, deliberate handwriting, hands trembling. She opened it. Inside was a single note, scrawled in the same elegant script. Meet me at the old train station tomorrow night. Come alone. E. Naomi's pulse raced. The woman had never given her name before. Now, at last, she had signed one letter. It was the only clue Naomi had, but with that clue came a choice to ignore it and protect her quiet, invisible life, or to follow it and risk being pulled into a world of wealth, power, and danger that could shatter everything she had fought to build. Naomi stared at the note for a long time, her heart torn between fear and curiosity, and in the silence of her kitchen she knew the truth. She was going to the station. She had to, even if it changed her life forever. The old train station sat like a skeleton at the edge of the city, its windows shattered, its iron beams rusting under years of neglect. The neighborhood around it had withered long ago, swallowed by silence and decay. Naomi had not been there since she was a teenager, sneaking through the wreckage with friends, daring each other to go deeper into its shadows. Now, as an adult, the place felt different, colder, more dangerous. She clutched the letter in her pocket as she approached. Her steps were hesitant, her pulse loud in her ears. She kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting someone to be watching. The woman E, as she had signed the note, had told her to come alone. Naomi had obeyed, though every instinct screamed to bring someone. Anyone, but who could she trust? Jordan? No. Her son was too young, two innocent friends. She had few, and none who could possibly understand. This was her burden alone. She slipped through a side entrance where the gate had long since broken. Inside, the vast station stretched in eerie silence, its once grand arches sagging under time's weight. Broken benches lined the walls. Old ticket booths, boarded and abandoned, stood like graves. Dust swirled in the beams of moonlight that pierced through broken glass. Naomi tightened her coat around herself. Each step echoed, making her feel exposed. Then she saw her. E stood near the far wall, beneath a cracked clock that had frozen decades ago. She wore no shawl this time, only a simple coat. Her face was uncovered, pale in the moonlight, her eyes sharp as ever. You came, E said softly, as though she had never doubted it. Naomi's throat was dry. You asked me to. E inclined her head. Most people would have ignored the note. You didn't. That tells me I can trust you. Naomi's chest tightened. Trust me with what? E looked around the empty station. Her expression shadowed the truth, or at least enough of it so you understand why I'm here. Naomi swallowed hard. She wasn't sure she wanted the truth. Not anymore. But she had already stepped too far into this web to turn back. E motioned for her to sit on a broken bench. Naomi obeyed, clutching her hands tightly together. E said at last. E. Eleanor Whitmore. The name hit Naomi like a thunderclap. Eleanor Whitmore. For decades, the tabloids had speculated about her. The elusive widow of Richard Whitmore, Daniel Whitmore's late father. After Richard's sudden death, she had all but vanished from public view. Rumors swirled. Some said she was ill, others that she had gone abroad, others still that she had died quietly and her family had kept it secret. But here she was, flesh and blood. Everyone thinks I disappeared, Eleanor continued, her voice carrying the weight of years. That I chose a life of seclusion. But the truth is far darker. Naomi leaned forward, heart hammering. I was forced out. Eleanor whispered, silenced, erased. Naomi's stomach twisted. By who? Eleanor's eyes burned. By my own son. The words hung in the air like poison. Naomi struggled to process them. Daniel Whitmore, the billionaire philanthropist, the golden man of the city, who funded hospitals and charities, whose smile appeared on magazine covers, had exiled his own mother. Why? Naomi asked, her voice breaking. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Because I know the truth about his fortune, about how it began, and if the world knew what I know, Daniel Whitmore's empire would crumble overnight. Naomi's breath caught. She wanted to demand more, but Eleanor's face warned her to be cautious. You're in danger already, Naomi, Eleanor said, her voice low. The moment you defended me, the moment you asked questions, you became part of this. There are men who watch me, men who make sure I never get too close. You've seen them without realizing. The guards, the black cars that linger near the tower. They know I'm still here, and they'll stop at nothing to ensure I remain hidden. Naomi's pulse raced. But why me? Why involve me at all? Eleanor's eyes softened, for the first time showing something almost maternal. Because you showed kindness when you had no reason to. You didn't see a burden or a nuisance on those steps. You saw a human being. That is rare, rarer than and I need someone who sees me for who I am, not the myth they've buried. Naomi's throat tightened. She thought of all the nights she had given Eleanor coffee, sandwiches, small pieces of herself. She hadn't realized it mattered this much. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. Eleanor leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I need your help to reveal the truth. I cannot do it alone. My son has eyes everywhere, and every time I try, they drag me back into silence. But with you, perhaps there is hope. Naomi's heart pounded. Eleanor, if this is true, if Daniel is as dangerous as you say, then helping you could cost me everything. My job, my home, even my son's safety. Eleanor's hand trembled as she reached forward, clasping Naomi's fingers. And if you don't help me, Naomi, then the lies will continue, and more lives will be destroyed by his power. You've already seen the edges of it. Haven't you noticed how quickly people disappear around him? How scandals are buried before they even begin? He is not the man the world believes. Naomi thought of the guards' laughter in the lobby, of the way they dismissed Eleanor as if she were nothing, of the way her own instincts had screamed that something about this woman was different. Fear clawed at her chest, but alongside it was something else. Anger. She knew what it felt like to be invisible, erased by people in power. She knew what it was to have no voice, and now, staring into Eleanor's desperate eyes, she realized she couldn't walk away still. Before Naomi could speak, a sound interrupted them. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Approaching through the darkness of the station, Eleanor's eyes widened with fear. She grabbed Naomi's wrist. They found us. Naomi's breath caught. Who don't ask, just run. But it was too late. A shadow emerged at the far end of the hall, a tall man in a black coat, his face obscured by the dim light. Another figure followed, then another. Naomi's stomach dropped. They weren't alone. Eleanor rose to her feet, her posture straight and defiant despite the tremor in her hands. You have to leave, she whispered to Naomi now. If they see you with me, you'll never be safe again. But Naomi couldn't move. Her legs felt rooted to the cold stone floor, her breath locked in her lungs. The men drew closer, their footsteps echoing like a drumbeat. One of them lifted a phone to his ear, murmuring something Naomi couldn't hear. Eleanor leaned close one last time, her words urgent and fierce. Find the envelope, she whispered. It's hidden where no one will think to look. Inside lies everything, proof of what Daniel has done. If you find it, you'll understand. Naomi's pulse thundered in her ears. Where? But Eleanor shoved her toward the side exit. Before she could finish, Naomi stumbled backward, her heart tearing in two. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to fight, to protect this woman who had somehow become a part of her life. But the men were nearly upon them, and she knew staying would mean disaster. With one last glance at Eleanor, standing tall beneath the broken clock, her eyes blazing with defiance, Naomi turned and fled into the night. She ran through the ruined station, out into the rain, her lungs burning, her mind spinning. Behind her, the echoes of the men's voices rose, sharp and commanding. And then, silence. Naomi didn't stop until she was blocks away, bent over, gasping for breath. The city lights blurred through her tears. What had she just witnessed? And what envelope? Eleanor's words replayed over and over in her mind. Inside lies everything, proof of what Daniel has done. Naomi realized. She was holding more than a stranger's secret. She was holding the key to exposing one of the most powerful men in America. And if Eleanor was right, people might already be hunting her for it. Naomi barely slept that night, even after locking every bolt on her small apartment door and checking twice that the windows were secure. Her body refused to rest. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every word, every look, from Eleanor in that abandoned station. The envelope. It gnawed at her thoughts, refusing to be pushed aside. What could possibly be inside? Documents, photographs, bank records, whatever it was. Eleanor had risked everything to pass the secret into Naomi's hands, but there was no envelope, not yet. Only the cryptic hint. It's hidden where no one will think to look. Naomi turned to check on Jordan, who was asleep in the next room. His small chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, his face innocent in the half-light. She wanted to believe they were safe, but deep down, she knew safety had slipped away the moment Eleanor whispered the truth. By dawn, Naomi had made her decision. She had to find the envelope. The next morning at Whitmore Tower felt different. Normally she carried herself in with the weary rhythm of routine, mop, sweep, polish, repeat. But today every shadow seemed deeper, every camera above her head sharper. She wondered if the men from the station had followed her, if they knew who she was. She pushed the thought aside, trying to appear as normal as possible. If anyone suspected, Her nerves, it could be disastrous. Her shift took her through the empty hallways on the upper floors, places most workers never lingered. The building was a palace of glass and steel, reflecting the city like a mirror. Daniel Whitmore's empire seemed to watch her from every surface. And then, as she dusted a row of framed photographs outside a private conference suite, something caught her attention, that it was a portrait larger than the others. Richard Whitmore, Daniel's late father. Beside him, a woman whose smile Naomi now recognized, Eleanor. Her breath caught. No one ever mentioned her name here. Naomi had worked in this tower for nearly a decade, and had never once heard Eleanor spoken of. It was as if she had been scrubbed from memory. But here she was, in plain sight. Smiling from a frame most people walked past without a glance. Naomi studied the photo. Richard stood tall in his tailored suit, while Daniel, younger, perhaps in his 20s, stood stiff at his side. But Eleanor, her hand was placed over her husband's, her eyes alive with something more than wealth. Naomi's fingers trembled as she straightened the frame. Something felt different about it, heavier. She glanced up and down the hallway. Empty. Her hand slipped behind the frame, searching, and there it was, a small envelope wedged between wood and wall. Her pulse roared in her ears. This had to be it. She carefully eased the frame back, sliding the envelope free. It was worn, the paper yellowing with time. No label, no seal, just weight. Naomi shoved it into the pocket of her uniform just as voices echoed from around the corner. To guards, laughing carelessly as they approached, she hurried down the hallway, heart in her throat, forcing her pace to look casual. She turned into a service stairwell just as the guards appeared behind her, their chatter fading as the door closed. Only when she was alone in the stairwell did she let herself breathe. She had the envelope, but now what to do with it? She didn't dare open it in the tower. Cameras watched everywhere. She needed privacy, safety. So she carried it with her through the rest of her shift, every step feeling like a risk. The envelope pressed against her leg, its presence burning through her pocket. She could feel its weight as if it were alive. At the end of the day, she hurried home. She locked the door, checked the windows again, then sat at her small kitchen table with the envelope before her. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Inside were papers, dozens of them, folded neatly, old receipts, bank transfers, contracts. Naomi's eyes scanned the first page, a bank statement. Millions moved between accounts she didn't recognize. Offshore holdings, shell companies, dates stretching back decades. Her brow furrowed. The next page was a typed contract, land rights, signatures, Richard Whitmore's name, Daniel Whitmore's name, and another name she didn't know, but Eleanor's handwriting in the margins circled it in red. Naomi turned page after page, each one darker than the last. Bribes, payoffs, evidence of construction deals that buried entire neighborhoods in debt, land stolen from families, a hospital Daniel had donated money to. Yet here was proof that the donation was stolen from government contracts. Her stomach churned. The final page stopped her cold. It was a death certificate, Richard Whitmore's, but someone had underlined the cause of death, cardiac arrest, and next to it, in Eleanor's neat handwriting, not true. Ask the coroner. Naomi's blood went cold. It wasn't just corruption. It wasn't just greed. Eleanor believed her husband, Daniel's father, had been murdered. The room spun. Naomi pressed the papers back into the envelope, shoving it beneath a loose floorboard near the couch. She needed time to think, time to understand, but time, she would soon learn, was the one thing she didn't have. The knock came late that night. It was soft at first, polite. Naomi froze. No one visited her this late. She peeked through the peephole. Two men in suits stood on the landing. They weren't neighbors, they weren't friends. Their posture screamed authority. One of them scanned the hallway like a hawk, while the other knocked again, harder this time. Miss Naomi's voice was low, even, but it carried menace. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Her heart seized. They knew her name. She stepped back from the door, her mind racing. If she didn't answer, would they force their way in? If she did, what would they do to her? Jordan stirred in his room, his voice sleepy. Mum. Naomi's chest tightened. She pressed a finger to her lips, willing him to stay quiet. The man knocked once more, louder. We won't be long. Just open the door. Naomi's legs shook. Her eyes darted toward the floorboard where the envelope lay hidden. They know, she didn't know how, but she felt it deep in her bones. She backed into the shadows, holding her breath. After a long silence, the men finally stepped away. She heard their shoes on the stairs, the creak of the front door opening, then closing. Naomi exhaled shakily. Relief washed over her. but only for a moment, because when she crept to the window and peered down into the street, the black car was still there, parked, waiting, and Naomi knew this was only the beginning. Naomi did not sleep, not really. Her body may have slumped in a chair near the window, her eyes may have closed for moments at a time, but her mind was on fire. Every car that passed on the street below, every creak of the building's old pipes, every distant bark of a dog made her flinch. The envelope lay under the floorboard, humming in her thoughts like an engine. It was too much to hold alone, too dangerous, yet to expose it felt just as deadly. The black car never moved. By dawn, Naomi knew she could not stay here. Jordan's safety outweighed everything else. She packed a small bag, clothes, snacks, the envelope carefully hidden within. She whispered to Jordan to stay quiet as they slipped out the back stairwell. Avoiding the street. Her plan was simple: disappear for a while, at least until she could decide what to do. But fate, it seemed, had grown tired of her plans. The first call came just after sunrise. Her cheap cell phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something in her gut told her not to. She answered with trembling fingers. Naomi. The voice was faint but familiar. Eleanor. Naomi's knees weakened. How did you? There's no time, Eleanor interrupted. Her voice was raspy, urgent. They know you have it. You cannot stay in that apartment. They'll tear it apart. Listen to me. I already left, Naomi whispered, glancing around the bus station where she now stood with Jordan. Her son clutched her hand, sensing her fear, though he didn't fully understand. Good, Eleanor breathed, relief crackling through the line. Then listen carefully. You must bring the envelope to me. Do not open it again. Do not show it to anyone. If Daniel's men catch you, the line crackled, a hiss of static, then silence. Naomi's heart sank. She tried calling back, but the number was blocked. She was alone again. Except she wasn't, because when she turned, she saw a man watching her from across the terminal. Suit, sunglasses, standing too still, his jaw set like stone. Naomi gripped Jordan's hand tighter. Let's go, baby. They slipped out a side exit, hearts pounding. Hours later, Naomi found herself in a part of the city she barely knew, ducking into alleys, switching buses, trying to stay ahead of the invisible net she felt closing around her. She hadn't eaten, hadn't thought of anything except movement. By afternoon, she reached the address scrawled on the back of one of the envelope's papers, a nursing home on the outskirts of town. Her pulse raced as she approached the gates. Could Eleanor be here? Inside, the air smelled of disinfectant and old carpets. Naomi asked quietly at the front desk, her voice low. The receptionist frowned. No one by that name here, Naomi insisted, desperate. Please, I know she's here. The woman shook her head. But Naomi noticed the way her eyes flickered, just for a second, to a hallway in the back. Naomi followed the flicker, and there, in a small courtyard beyond the glass doors, sat Eleanor. She was thinner than before, her hair tucked under a scarf, her frame fragile against the bench, but her eyes, those piercing eyes, lit up the moment they met Naomi's. Naomi hurried to her, Jordan at her side. She pulled the envelope from her bag, gripping it tightly. Eleanor's hand shook as she reached for it. You don't know what this means. You've done more than you realize. Naomi wanted answers, needed them. What's in it? Why are they after you? Eleanor's lips trembled. Because the truth destroys everything. My son, he doesn't just inherit an empire. He buried his father to take it. And if this proof reaches the right hands, he loses it all. Naomi's breath caught. She remembered the death certificate, the handwriting. Not true. Ask the coroner, saying Daniel. Eleanor's voice cracked. Yes. He killed his own father. Naomi staggered back, dizzy. Billionaire, philanthropist, the man whose name adorned hospitals and scholarships, a murderer. Her hands shook. Why give this to me? Why not the police? Eleanor's eyes were fierce, despite her frailty. Because you're the only one who helped me when I had nothing. You saw a woman in need, not a burden. I can trust you in a way I cannot trust anyone else. The police, the courts, many of them are his, but you're free. Naomi's throat tightened. She wasn't free. She was a janitor with a child, hunted by men she couldn't even name, but the faith in Eleanor's gaze anchored her. Then the sound shattered the moment. The crunch of tires on gravel, the slam of doors, voices. Naomi's head whipped toward the entrance. Men in suits, at least, 4, spreading through the courtyard like wolves. Jordan clutched her leg, his eyes wide with fear. Eleanor grabbed Naomi's hand, shoving the envelope back toward her. Go, take it, run. Naomi hesitated, but Eleanor's face hardened. I'm not the one who needs saving. You are, and so is your boy. Now run. The men spotted them. Shouts erupted. Naomi's body moved before her mind caught up. She scooped Jordan into her arms, clutching the envelope to her chest, and darted toward the back gate of the courtyard. Bullets of panic raced through her veins as footsteps thundered behind her. Shouts of stop cut through the air. She slammed through the gate, sprinting into the alley beyond. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed, but she didn't stop. Not as the men gained ground, not as Jordan cried into her shoulder, not as the world tilted into chaos. And then a black SUV screeched around the corner ahead, blocking the alley. Naomi skidded to a halt, heart clawing at her ribs. The driver's door opened. A tall figure stepped out, impeccable suit, cold eyes, power radiating from his very posture. Daniel Whitmore. In that frozen moment, Naomi realized the truth. Eleanor hadn't just been hiding from faceless men, she had been hiding from her own son, and now Naomi stood trapped, with Jordan trembling in her arms and the envelope of secrets pressed to her chest, face to face with the billionaire who would do anything to keep those secrets buried.